Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.
Let's turn our attention to the Human Resource Management Association of Barbados and our ongoing relationship with them. We're happy to be joined this morning. As I told you, we want to look at personnel administration versus human resource management. Happy to be joined by a senior HR generalist and a former president of HRMAB herself in Arlene Bushell. With her is Tiffany Jones, who's a senior HR practitioner and a member of HRMAB. Ladies, good morning.
Good morning, Pearson.
Well, we all said it almost in tandem. I like that. You've been trained well. Let's talk a little bit about the work as HR practitioners. And I know there is a difference between personnel administration and HR management. I'll start with that simple question, as most people would ask, what's the difference?
Well, Pearson, the terms, and those terms are used in today. People talk about personnel management or personnel administration and human resource management in the same sentence, but there is a difference. Really and truly, the discipline started with personnel management or personnel administration in the earlier days. In terms of personnel administration, it came about from the situation where employees, having worked in especially in industrial situations, started to become aware of their rights, and they were concerned about their working conditions and the way they were treated to a large extent. And that's where personnel management came in. So initially, it would have dealt with such issues as recruitment, workplace conditions, wages and salaries. And then as time went on, the focus changed because personnel management really focused on the organization's objectives and its goals, and in achieving those goals, along with people helping to achieve those goals. The difference being human resource management then encompasses a lot of what you would find in personnel management. There are lots of similarities because I spoke earlier about recruitment and selection, wages or compensation, industrial relations. So human resource management changed the focus in that it sought to brought about, or it seeks to bring about, a balance between the needs of the organization, and it takes into consideration the individual employee. So that is one of the major differences between personnel management and human resource management, the
Whenever I,
focus.
whenever I thought of personnel administration, I've always felt that people were seen as units of production, and that was it. You are just a thing who came to the office to deliver a service, and you go. In human resource management, I see it as, you're looking at the total person, how they feel, not just what they can do, and what can you do
Yes.
as an organization to ensure you get the most out of the individual as well. So I'm not sure if in my basic way I've hit the definition, but that's my
Yes,
point
you
of
have.
view.
You have.
All
The
right,
focus is
good.
different.
Glad to hear that. Now, there are many, as a consequence of this even subtle as it can be, there are many things that affect the employee and also the employer when we start to look at human resource management today, especially with a workforce today that says, you know what, I have rights. Whereas before, whatever rights you had, well, but now I have rights. So from your
Yes.
perspective, Tiffany, what can you say about how we bridge between the human resource and the employer?
Great question, Pearson. One of the things we have to look at is how we communicate with our employees. So, bridging that gap starts with communication, understanding the needs of the employees and how the company can meet those needs. In addition to that, we also need to ensure that employees understand the vision of the company. What are we trying to achieve as a brand? What do we want out there attached to our name? What are our performance goals? What's our vision? Once we have these things out in the open and these are understood, then employees can start to bite into the vision of the company and feel a part of that company. And in addition to that, just following on to what Arlene mentioned as it relates to human resources, one of the big elements of that is development and developing staff. And that is something that the workforce is especially passionate about. And human resources consistently, once done right, leads and lends to that function of the HR function in the company. So being able to communicate, understand the needs, making sure that everyone buys into the company's vision is a great start.
That's such a shift away from what used to happen under personnel administration, where we have an objective to meet the objective or else, or you can leave the job. Now you're saying it will take a little bit more, but Arlie, you're laughing, but you know that's what it was. You either do
That
it
is
and
true.
you
Yes.
leave, or you do it and you stay. And so
Yeah.
now today we're saying it's vastly different because legislation has also changed. So how do we begin to have, as HR practitioners, the understanding of what that legislation is, and so how we treat to those that we work with and employ?
Well, legislation plays a major role because it deals in large measure with bringing structure and order to the employment relationship. So it's a guide, and it is a situation where it is the law, so you're required to follow. One example of a piece of legislation which has brought about major changes in the employment relationship is what we have here in Barbados, the Employment Rights Act. And that for particular rights. So, as I said, it brings about structure and order to the employment relationship. And it has made a difference because, okay, you spoke earlier about situation under personal management where the employer will probably say, well, you do the job or you go. In the current situation under the employment rights legislation, the employee has a right not to be unfairly dismissed. And that is a major right under that legislation. So it means that, as Tiffany said earlier, the focus is different and you're now looking beyond just what the organization wants to achieve. You're looking at the employees' interests, their development, and so on as well.
And a lot of times in that relationship, Tiffany, the employee feels as if everything has become so mechanical. Now there are metrics, there are measurements, there are appraisals, there are all sorts of things. It feels almost as if it's been mechanized. What do you say about that, and how critical it is as HR practitioners that one understands that and is able to translate that message to the employee?
That is an interesting question because human resources is always tasked with having to strike that balance between people and the business, the needs of both entities. And that can be a very delicate dance, but very, very necessary. And it's always about, again, everybody buying in. So while we are looking at the needs and the wellness of the staff members, we also exist in the business to contribute to the productivity and the profits of the company. But again, we're striking that balance is not just focusing on what the company needs, but what the staff needs, and starting to meet those needs, so that the human resources function isn't just seen as the police of the organization, Pearson, because we're not just talking about meet those targets and that's it. What do you need from the company? How can we help you? How can we develop you as a staff member? Balancing those two needs is very critical if the HR department is supposed to function effectively. And that is one of the major differences as well with the personnel function, in that it only speaks to the basic needs of the staff member. Whereas with human resources, we look at the employee as a whole person and as an individual in the company.
I mean, it's a silly question, I think, now. Does it vary depending on the sector, or are all sectors generally in HR management operating with those basic tenets of what HR is about?
Well, what I would
Well,
say is that it sometimes varies. I don't want to say by sector, but based on the value that the company places on the HR function. And that sometimes is the problem that we may face. A company that understands the value and the merit of having a well-functioning and a well-oiled HR department will get the benefits. And so it shouldn't vary, but unfortunately sometimes it does. But that's where HRMAB and what we're doing today comes in, where we're providing advocacy and we're shedding a light for those persons who may only see the function as personnel management.
HR today is challenged by a whole host of things. The pandemic caused a shift in how we do business, and so HR had to adjust to what HR does as well. And then there are the definitions around what we do as well. Job descriptions are changing, job terms are changing, a whole host of things. It's almost swirling for the employee. How do you, as HR managers, keep abreast so that you keep in step with what's changing, constantly happening?
Well, Pearson, the world has changed. We are now very much into the age of technology. So that is one way that HR managers, not only in Barbados, but the world, can keep abreast of trends and the changes and what is happening and what is likely to happen. So we keep abreast, and then what we need to be able to do is to be able to communicate with our staff how those changes are coming and what they mean and the impact that it will have and how the organization will be managing those changes. But there have been several changes. You spoke about the pandemic, and for instance, here in Barbados, we were all at the end of March 2020, I think it was March 28th, the country was going into lockdown. The first time that we would have had that type of situation, and you had to adapt very quickly in order to be able to have continuity as it relates to your businesses, to keep employees, what should I say, engaged. And because there were many concerns, there was lots of anxiety, there were lots of unknowns. Some organizations were able to adapt more quickly than others. Some organizations, unfortunately, did not survive the pandemic. And the ones that did survive were the ones who were able to adapt very quickly. We had to go into in large measure, we had to go into remote work. You had to work from home. And that meant you were not in the office, you were not all in the same place. Technology had to come into play because in order to maintain contact, we had to go very much into technology, into our computers. That is when Zoom came very much to the forefront. It's still very much in the forefront.
Yes.
And the other programs as well, Microsoft Teams and all the other things. And then some organizations used in terms of telephones because you were away from the office, but in order to keep contact, for instance, Jabber is a piece of software that organizations use. I can answer my telephone from at home, but I'm answering on behalf of the organization.
Yes.
I can deal with consumers or customers and continue to contact business. So yes, there are lots of changes, and it is a very dynamic kind of environment, and it means that you have to be ready. You have to be ready to adapt very quickly.
Yeah, you HR practitioners have to be adaptable as well to ever changing. So Tiffany, I want to ask this question. I mean, as employees, we know we turn to HR for guidance, everything. So who does HR turn to for guidance?
Well, Pearson, we have a network of HR professionals and we tap into each other. And the beauty about HRMAB is that it can definitely fill that void. So you have, again, this community of persons who understand from experience what we go through on a daily basis, why we do what we do and what we do. And that helps in a major way. And then there are also other avenues that we can use as well. But you know, tapping into each other and leaning on each other has definitely been a great way of receiving support.
And I'm so glad you said that because you're more than personnel, you're also people. And so HR, we must be able to respect our HR officers as well, folks. I'm speaking to the employee now because oftentimes we beat them up, we say some of the worst things about them because we didn't get the satisfaction we wanted. But they're just people too who operate within the same structures that we have to operate, with the same legislations that we all have to operate, and so they're there to guide and to give the best advice. And so I can imagine the pressure HR managers and human resource people are under when you are bombarded by the thousands of employees. You know, this is a conversation that has to continue as we look more and more about how our human resources are managed on the island for productivity and for the betterment of the island as well. So folks, if you want to be a member of the HRMAB, HRMAB, the Human Resources Management Association of Barbados, membership is easy, right,
Yes, it is.
Good.
Yes, it is. You can apply online.
Right.
and you can fill out your membership form. There are several categories of membership, from student membership, we have right up to professional membership. So
Fantastic.
it's easy. And there's the website. You can go to the website. There's lots of information on the website in terms of how to join and what the association does and what we are all about.
So that's what they're all about. That and a whole lot more, and their benefits to the organization as well. As Tiffany said, you lean on each other, you learn from each other's experience, and you can now better develop the people who you are responsible for. Thank you, Arlene Bushell and Tiffany Jones of HRMAB for joining us this morning in our Talking HR with HRMAB. We are so happy to have you. Thank you so very much. All the best.
Thank you, Pearson.
Thanks, Pearson.
You're very welcome.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning.